All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Philosophy Bro. I am the Postmodern Philosophy Bro for the purposes of this video. And of course, I'm going to continue my series on the book called Cynical Theories by James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose. James Lindsay, of course, the former mathematician and currently professional mangler of philosophy, and Helen Pluckrose, the journalist. And we're going to talk about chapter 6 of their book, Cynical Theories, in which they make the ridiculous claim that intersectional feminism is postmodernist, which, as I said, is ridiculous because postmodernism has nothing at all whatsoever to do with intersectional feminism. And in this case, I usually think they're wrong about everything they're talking about, but in this case, I think they actually are right that intersectional feminism is bad or like can be a problem, but they're they're right for the wrong reasons, basically. So I also have a problem with intersectional feminism, but postmodernism is not at all the way they paint the picture of it, which is usually the case with James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose. So anyway, this is chapter 6 here. So okay, the first claim they make is that intersectional feminism assumes the postmodern political principle. And if you've seen my other videos in my series on cynical theories, you know that they just totally invented this term, postmodern political principle, because there is no such term as postmodern political principle. You can't find that in any of the books by any of these so-called postmodernists or critical theory authors or even intersectional feminist authors. And like so-called postmodernism itself has nothing inherently to do uh, with politics even, because as I've often said, in when we're talking about Foucault or Derrida, Foucault in particular, because I'm slightly more familiar with him than Derrida, what they're talking about in their books is descriptive. It's not prescriptive. Where people like James Lindsay, Helen Pluckrose, and Jordan Peterson and others go wrong is that they assume that everything Foucault and Derrida are saying are political prescriptions, whereas actually they're more like sociological and historical descriptions of the way concepts are formed and the way people are put into categories, the way categories are invented by various institutions like religion and science, with the example of homosexuality, the category of homosexuals, as I've talked about many times before in terms of Foucault. So yeah, there is no postmodern political principle, and this postmodern political principle, what they say it is that society is constructed. What does it say here? Society is constructed by power and privilege. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the reason I also have a problem with intersectional feminism is that, I mean, this is an oversimplification, and I haven't read into this as much as I have into postmodernism. But and I don't have a problem with feminism per se, but like I'm more of a sex positive classical feminist myself. If you would actually call me a feminist, I don't know if you would, but the problem to me with intersectional feminism is that it does, like, if the postmodern political principle is a real thing, which it isn't, it does do what James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose say does, which is that, and probably not all the others agree with this, and it isn't a monolithic realm of thought, but they seem to assume that society is constructed by power and privilege, and that is one of the many valid criticisms of intersectional feminism, in my opinion, that society is constructed with power and privilege, and they literally start doing the oppression Olympics and stuff like that. Like, a woman is more oppressed than a man, a black woman is more than a white woman, a lesbian a lesbian black woman is more oppressed than a white straight woman, a disabled black lesbian woman is more oppressed than an able-bodied white heterosexual woman, and it just goes. It just goes like that ad infinitum. And obviously that doesn't make any sense to me. That's just dumb in my opinion. But the thing is that this has nothing at all to do with postmodernism, and it just endlessly annoys me that people strawman postmodernism as this false villain. Like, it's not actually a villain. Foucault and Derrida said some really interesting things, and I really highly recommend Foucault's History of Sexuality, Derrida's of Grammatology, and countless other books by so-called postmodernists who were actually post-structuralists, but they didn't even accept those. They hadn't even heard of those terms when they were interviewed about it and asked about whether they were postmodernists. Anyway, so postmodernism, though, it sure as hell does not assume that power, that society is constructed by power and privilege, and all of these evil, powerful people are controlling society and oppressing people, and we have to overthrow the evil power. The lowly oppressed people have to overthrow the evil, powerful people, or shit like that, which is why James Lindsay claims that postmodernism is like Marxism, and Helen Pluckrose does too. But obviously, that's not what postmodernism is at all. That's not Foucault's definition of power, even as I've talked about before in my previous videos on this book. His definition of power is not that power is always a bad thing and only bad people have power and that sort of thing. Power can be a good thing sometimes too. It can be a good thing or a bad thing. It depends on who has the power and what they use it for. Power is a tool, right? It's not just this inherently bad thing that bad people have and use to oppress other people. The oppressed people can use it against their oppressors too, but that's not what power means. Like, Foucault himself would say, how do we know who are the oppressors and who are the oppressed, who are the powerful, who really have the power? He wouldn't just have this like Marxist sounding thing going on. It's that power can be good if a good person uses it for good purpose. Like, I don't know, Foucault was fairly anti-religious, but if Jesus could have used his power for good if he hadn't gotten killed, perhaps, for example. Like, there can be heroes who use power for good, and Foucault would totally agree with that. Anyway, so postmodernism, if we for the sake of argument grant the false assumption that this postmodern political principle exists, which it does not, and Foucault and Derrida are postmodernists, which they are not, then even if you accept both of those premises and then you say that Foucault and Derrida's postmodernism operates on the postmodern political principle, which means that society is constructed by power and privilege, then that's just totally fucking false, because they didn't Foucault and Derrida did not, even if you think that they're postmodernists and they believe, or even if you think that they were postmodernists, and even if you think that the postmodern political principle is a real thing, Foucault and Derrida certainly did not fucking believe it. They did not believe that society was constructed by power and privilege, and all of these evil people have power and we have to take it away from them. Like, they were those sections of their writing that people who haven't even read their books, like James Lindsay and Jordan Peterson and Helen Pluckrose, get mad about. Those What they're doing in those sections of their books are just they're just making historical and sociological descriptions about the way culture changes throughout history, the way societies are constructed, the way institutions like religion and science and religion and science and governments chiefly, how they help construct society and concepts and societies, and help label people and put them in the different categories and sort people by race, gender, and sexuality, as if these are actually important categories, because this is an important fact that I always mention too. Foucault didn't think that like putting people into categories that was a good thing. That's why he thought the creation of the category of homosexual during the Enlightenment was like basically a bad thing, because before there were always gay people, of course, but there was not this separate category of gay people. So they were just regular people, but they had sex with men instead. Of course, that was frowned upon in some religious circles, but way less during the Enlightenment and after that than ever before in human history, because before there was not the category of homosexual. So no, Foucault and Derrida don't like sorting people into these different identity politics categories. They were totally against what the so-called postmodern political principle is. They sure as fuck did not believe that society is constructed by power and privilege, just like intersectional feminists seem to believe. So my overall point here is they're somewhat right about criticizing intersectional. James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose are somewhat right in criticizing intersectional feminism, but they're right in criticizing intersectional feminism for the wrong reasons, and they criticize it in the wrong way because they blame it on postmodernism, which has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with intersectional feminism. All right, so yeah, as usual, James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose are wrong, but less wrong than usual, because I agree that there are some valid criticisms of intersectional feminism, as I said, but connecting it to postmodernism and inventing this term postmodern political principle that makes no sense whatsoever is really stupid. So don't focus on the wrong target. Don't strawman the wrong villains. Focus on the right villains. That's why I get so pissed off about this, because so-called postmodernist authors like Foucault and Derrida are they have some really interesting things to say, and you should read them for yourself. All right, postmodernism good, intersectional feminism bad, cynical theories 99% bad, and it's a terrible book, and don't listen to the things these idiots say. Read the books for yourselves. All right, thanks again, everyone. I've talked about this chapter for long enough, and yeah, thanks everyone for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Make sure you do, because a lot of people watch without subscribing. Smash the like button, make sweet love to it, elbow drop it, do whatever you want, as long as you press it, and click that bell to be notified when I come out with new videos. Next one, I believe, is going to be, actually, yeah, I think it's probably going to be about, oh yeah, a clip in which the Derrida biography author Peter Salmon and I are talking about this strongman that people like Jordan Peterson use of Foucault having been a Marxist. And I use Foucault's direct quote from History of Sexuality: government is the only fatal form of power. Yeah, that sounds like fucking Marxist, right? So check out that upcoming clip as well, and check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description as always. And like I always say, most importantly, of course, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose are 99% wrong. They're idiots who don't know what they're talking about. Intersectional feminism is still bad, though, and postmodernism is really cool. So read these books for yourself and decide for yourself instead of listening to what these idiots say. All right. Thanks again, everyone, and adios until next time.